Hey folks, how's it going? So what is up with all of these balloons? For those that haven't been following, the U.S. has now shot down four separate balloons, or four separate objects, I should say. The first was the balloon that was tracked all the way across the United States and was shot down off the Carolina coast. The next one was shot down over Alaska. Then there was one over the Yukon Territory in Canada that was shot down by a U.S. fighter plane uh, at the request of Trudeau. Um, and then finally, the fourth one, airspace was closed over Montana this weekend. I believe this was on Saturday. I could be wrong about that. But airspace over Montana was closed due to a radar anomaly. They launched two fighters to do a visual check, and from the reports I'm reading, they couldn't identify anything that would account for the anomaly. So a little while later, the airspace was reopened, and then there was another anomaly or radar reflection above Michigan, and they shut down airspace over Michigan and launched I think it was at least one, maybe two more fighter jets then to try to identify that contact. At first, they didn't. I think, if I'm not mistaken, at first they didn't identify anything. They didn't see anything, but then they actually spotted it. It was another high altitude object, and there's some confusion as to whether or not it was a balloon. I don't know. I believe it probably was, but they shot it down. And they're trying to do FBI and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are trying to do a recovery of debris in Lake Huron. But now China is saying that there's been a port city in China where a balloon has been spotted over that city. I believe it. Let's see, it was Qingdao, the port city of Qingdao, and they're accusing the U.S. of sending balloons to spy on China. Curious how we never heard anything about this prior to the ones we started seeing in the U.S. But anyway, China is now saying that it's a U.S. balloon. The U.S. has been using balloons to spy on China multiple times since January 2022. I believe they account for more than 10 times U.S. spy balloons have been spotted crossing China. I'm not sure I believe that for a second, but okay, let's take it at face value. So what's going on with all of these balloons? Just as a point of interest, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of theories. People are speculating everything from it's China, it's Biden, even aliens and things like that. I've been sitting here thinking about it. Actually, I've been thinking about it as I was doing some work today, trying to figure out what the purpose to all of this is. And I came down with three or four different scenarios. Two of them kind of overlap. So I want to go over these with you. And I'm not a really good at, and I'm going to be upfront with you guys. I'm not an expert at analyzing things and war gaming, things like that. But it never hurts to try to figure out, okay, think critically about something that's going on and try to figure out what the purpose is behind it. Who is there to benefit from it? So first and most obvious is China. And you could say, China has a spy balloon program, okay, and there's been balloons spotted over as many as 40 countries, I believe. You've seen there's been some down in South America, some in South Korea, Canada, America. It's the foremost theory is it's China behind it, and that's all well and good. Then you hear China talking about, oh well, we've got a balloon over our city now, and this is the U.S. doing it, and they've done it more than 10 times just since January of 2022. It's like, okay, well, maybe they have, maybe they haven't. We haven't heard any reports about uh, balloons being spotted over China um, until now. And I did a quick search. I didn't do a real deep dive on it, but I did a quick search, and I couldn't find any record of any news articles where China was accusing the U.S. of sending spy balloons over Chinese soil into Chinese airspace. So, if it's China, how can you explain the balloon over the Chinese port city of Qingdao? Well, one possibility, and this is just me spitballing here, one possibility could be they sent it up as a way to kind of uh, take the scrutiny off of themselves. Everybody's pointing their fingers at China, and if China sent one up and said, "Well, here's a U.S. balloon. We've got one over our city now," they might be able to say, "Well, that's evidence that it's somebody else. It's not us doing it; it's somebody else." And there's a certain logic to that, but uh, because why would China have a balloon over their own city? Well, first and foremost, China is an extremely communist uh, country. They have extreme controls over their own people. They monitor and censor everything. So this could just be uh, they're taking advantage of something that's over their own city and trying to use that to divert attention away from them as the source of these balloons that are being spotted everywhere. And you can see how that could kind of work. But if I remember correctly, in during the pandemic, China was using uh, balloons and drones and what have you to spray disinfectants in the cities. So, they could have simply taken one of these and said, we're going to fly this here and then we're going to report it and we're going to accuse the U.S. of doing it and take the blame off of ourselves, redirect attention, uh, which is a good, it's a favorite tactic of China to employ misdirection and uh, diversion. And that could be said for any country, really, any government. The United States government is bad about doing that as well. I would say that in some ways, the United States is experts at that as far as the government is concerned. Okay, so what could be the second scenario? A lot of people are saying it's Biden, that it's the United States government doing this. They're sending these balloons up so that they can blame China for them, uh, so that we can ramp up tensions with and manipulate tensions and political or not political, but public opinion over China. Try to make China out to be the bad guy, which I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that, but potentially to make China out to be this really bad guy, that this is the next threat to our country and this is who we have to deal with and we've got to get ready for war. I could definitely see that as a possibility. Uh, I don't think that's it, but I could definitely see that as a possibility. I could definitely see our government doing that to us, doing something like this and then lying about it and blaming somebody else. I mean, that's been done countless times. The third theory that I've got, and it kind of overlaps with the second, is that it could be done by the U.S. government, yes, but not solely for ramping up anti-China sentiment. But consider this: we're at the start of 2023. What's coming up next year? It's the start of uh, next year is the presidential election, right? And we're already having certain people come out and announcing that they're running for president or that they're considering running for president. There's already motions in place to organize campaigns. And one theory is that Biden could be the U.S. government could be sending up a bunch of these balloons, and Biden's taking a hardline stance on this and having them shot down on purpose, having our own balloons shot down. Well, why would he? And one of them may have, you know, gotten across to China somehow. Who knows? Well, why would he do that? Well, think about this. One of Biden's biggest flaws as president, um, or one of his biggest criticisms from the public, is that he is extremely weak. He is old. His mental capacity is diminished, and he's a weak president. He he governs or he leads from a position of weakness. He's not a very strong uh, person. He doesn't have this uh, personality that presents strength and power. Uh, and he's presented this all throughout his presidency so far. Okay, well, what's that got to do with the balloons? Well, if you want to take a very weak president, one who has a very weak image, and try to change that image and make him appear strong and powerful and feared and respected, one thing you could do is you could launch a bunch of these balloons from way out to sea or whatever, or from bases overseas or what have you. And some of these balloons have been uh, described as having the ability to have some control of movement. They're not completely at the whim of the wind stream and wind patterns. Uh, so these could be gently directed in certain areas. Well, if you've got a weak president and you want to change his image so that it conveys strength and power, you could send up these balloons all over the place and direct them in paths where they would enter U.S. airspace. And then you could be in the position then of having that president order uh, fighters to shoot down these objects, to create a hard line on protecting U.S. airspace. That's a possibility. And again, it's one that makes a lot of sense because it's really early in the campaign season. I mean, this is at the very beginning of campaign season for the presidential election next year. But there are so many people criticizing Biden, and he's got such a poor image as a president to a lot of Americans. I would argue to the vast majority of Americans. Even a lot of Democrats are not happy with the way he's handled things. So I would argue that by doing this and by starting it now, you have a whole year and a half, 2 years to try to build this strong, uh, powerful image for his campaign. Uh, and the longer you have to do that, the more time you have to do that. In his case, the better, because again, he's received a lot of criticism. There's a lot of people that are constantly attacking him. I'm certainly no fan of the president, not by a long shot. In fact, I think he's one of the the weakest, worst presidents we've ever had, and that's saying something. But that's just my personal opinion. But again, if you wanted to try to change his image and build a case for him being a strong, powerful leader ahead of the 2024 election, now would be a good time to start. And this would be one way you could start to build that image of a strong president, a strong presidential candidate. Lastly, perhaps it's not even the US or China doing this. Perhaps it's another nation. Um, I mean, we could point fingers. What are the big possibilities here? I suppose South Korea could, I mean, North Korea could possibly be one candidate, but it's doubtful. I doubt any of the countries like Iran or what have you, or Syria, any of those. I doubt any of those would resort to a method like that. Russia, is that a possibility? I think so. I mean, it's a very slim possibility. They've got their hands full with Ukraine right now, but this could be one way that they're striking back, so to speak, for all of the weapons that we're sending to Ukraine, all the money and all the military aid that we're sending to Ukraine. So while I don't think Russia is a prime candidate for this, I wouldn't completely rule it out. I still believe, and it's my opinion alone, that the two most likely candidates would be our own government here in the United States or China. And to be honest, based on things that I've seen our own government do to its own people, uh, I wouldn't put it past our own government, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't think that China would hesitate for a bit to use these balloons to spy on us and then send one up over to one of their own cities to try to make themselves look innocent. So, what can we do about it? There's there's nothing we can do about any of this. I mean, these balloons. This is just something to watch. A lot of people are looking at it as propaganda, and they're just ignoring it completely. I can understand that because, as has been recently put to me, the government loves people that spread their own propaganda for them, and that's true. That's true to a point. That's a very fair point. But I would also say that the government also loves people that ignore what the government does and automatically discount it completely. So, uh, talking about this, are we spreading propaganda? I don't. I don't necessarily think we're spreading propaganda so much as we're looking at events, we're making note of when these events happen, and we're trying to understand what the purpose is behind these events, how it affects us, which is the most important thing to me. How does this affect us? And what can I do to prepare myself for any negative consequences that this might have or negative impacts that this might have on my own life? That's just, anyway, that's all I've got. That's just some thoughts that I had running through my mind today. My personal belief, this is most likely China behind this, but I wouldn't completely rule out our own government as being a possible candidate for the source of all of this activity. Uh, Regardless, it is propaganda because if it's our own government doing it, they're doing it to drum up strength for President Biden leading into the next election. If it's China doing it, well, obviously they're using whatever method they can to try to spy on us and collect information potentially for going into a conflict with us in the next couple of years. Because we know for a fact that China has been prepping for war with the United States. I mean, they've got there's places out in their deserts where they've got mock-ups of U.S. ships and U.S. buildings that they've been training on attacking, doing drills on. So we know for a fact they're training for war. They're preparing for war with us. So, anyway, like I said, that's just my thoughts. Just some thoughts I had running around in my head the past couple of days while I'm looking at all of this. Is it something I'm spending an enormous amount of time dwelling on? No. I've got other things going on that I need to focus on, as you can see behind me. Uh, and I've got a long list of projects lining up right behind this that I need to focus on. So I'm aware of it. I'm watching it. I'm thinking about it, but it's not the majority of my attention. Things like this, getting things done, that's what I'm focused on, and that's what you should be focused on too. Prepping, building redundancies in your life, building security in your own life, resiliency and self-sufficiency. Take care of yourselves, your families, stay safe, look out for each other, keep prepping, and don't get complacent, as I always say. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't. I've got more videos coming out as soon as I can get them done. Obviously, my time's prioritized to other things, but I'll get these videos out as soon as I possibly can. Again, I appreciate you guys watching. I really do. And until next time, folks, I'll catch you later.